all the transgendered, hookers and dancers and fly-by nights and roustabouts and everything else. That's where they all hung out. And that's pretty much where my investigation began. Just, meeting the crowd. And what I discovered, like I said, it wasn't a murder story. It was about celebrities and their handlers doing stupid things to protect their client's reputation at any cost. Baresi, like I said, he was retained by Marty the Pitbull singer to round up all those transgender prostitutes. I mean, these were women with names like Tempest and Visa. I like that one. Cut right to the chase. Visa. And his marching orders from Marty the Pitbull singer was to get them to reverse the stories that they had sold to the tabloids in videotape depositions. And yes, they were all paid to change their stories. Were their stories true? Of course they were. But that didn't matter. Nothing matters in Hollywood. The point I was trying to make about Marty Singer was, and the lengths that he went to protect his client. If any of this was evidentiary in a legal proceeding or something like that, this is a lawyer who's actively suborning perjury from material witnesses. Yeah, but that's Hollywood, right? Well, how did I eventually prove that these transgendered hookers were, actually had these adventures with Mr. Eddie Murphy, Good Samaritan? Well, Paul Baresi, the bagman, led me to the godmother of these hookers, Candace Watkins, otherwise known as Carnal Candy. I had to take the Longland route to find her. Started in the Spotlight Lounge. Spotlight Lounge used to be up on Yucca and Cahuenga, not far from the world famous newsstand there. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, was where Eddie was saying he was going in the wee hours of the morning when he played Good Samaritan by picking up this transgendered hooker, Addison Seuli, off Santa Monica Boulevard. He said, I was just driving around and I was going to go pick up a newspaper at the newsstand or something like that. Yeah, right. Well, long story short, this tale, it became the ballast for my story about Paul Baresi, called The Bagman. Now, the Spotlight Lounge, I don't think it's there anymore. And if it is, it's probably, back then it was a transgender bar and it was an immense amount of fun. It had the disco ball and,
Well, I know they had the awning with the rainbow on it.
That's
right.
It
was right on the corner there. Yeah.
Sure. And, the greatest characters I've ever met sashayed through those doors, if you know what I'm saying. And I would sit there. I staked that bar out for 3 days and 3 nights until finally I had a name. I was looking for Carnal Candy. I was looking for Candace Watkins. And finally, someone I met there on the 3rd night gave me her number. And I called her up. And, what I found was a very, very welcoming godmother of the transgender community. And she invited me to her apartment in North Hollywood. She was big. She was well over 6 feet tall. Big hands, big feet, and an Adam's apple that would have poked me right between the eyes if I stood up against her. But you know what? She was a character. And let's just say she kept good records because I said, she had gone to the tabloids and told her story about Eddie Murphy's fascination and fetish with feet. And so, needless to say, or I'll say it, there was toe sucking involved with her adventure with Eddie Murphy, as she told it. Well, anyway, I said, listen, did Paul Baresi come and pay you to go to Marty Singer's office and change your story, to say it was all a lie when you knew it was the truth? And she said, well, of course he did. And I said, how can we prove that? And she went into her files. And this transgendered hooker kept good records because she pulled out a check
Wow.
for $10,000 signed by who? Marty
the Pitbull singer.
the Pitbull singer. And I had it. I had everything I needed. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is just reminding me the story about how Jerry Springer got himself out of office. He was the mayor of Cleveland or Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, I think, yeah.
And apparently he was visiting prostitutes, and he paid a prostitute with a check.
Right.
And, it's like always been said, well, who else would be dumb enough to pay a prostitute with a check? And, wow, lawyer. Okay.
Never, ever leave a paper trail.
It's just a little reality check there I needed just to make sure.
Oh, my God. Well, Eddie Murphy fucked up. When he got popped with Addison Seule, otherwise known as Shalimar, he was right in the middle of making the child-friendly movie Dr. Dolittle. This did not look good. So, in his attempt at damage control, he took exactly the wrong tack. I remember he went on Entertainment Tonight, and he was claiming, and I'll quote him, to hell with it, "This is an act of kindness that turned into a fucking horror show. I love my wife and I'm not gay." And then he pledged never, ever to play Good Samaritan again. Oops. Shortly thereafter, he was roundly skewered in a Saturday Night Live bit called Eddie Murphy, Good Samaritan. I mean, that was his alma mater. That's where his career started. I got another story about that, about the guy that they had tapped for Eddie's role on Saturday Night Live, who never quite made it, and the reasons why. And I hope to share that with you sometime here on the Gray Zone. But right now, I'll just let you know that Eddie Murphy, at the height of his stardom, was not the first choice the year he debuted on Saturday Night Live. But what is it with these guys? Hugh Grant got popped with Divine Brown in Hollywood. Remember that? A Simple BJ. 1995, I think it was. Do you remember how Hugh Grant dealt with that?
Well, he went
beautifully.
Went on. Was it Leno?
Yeah, he went on Leno. He went on Leno, and he basically, I remember him. He just, Leno goes, Hugh. By the way, I'm really bad with impressions, but Leno goes, Hugh, what were you thinking? And of course, Hugh Grant just looked at him, smiled, and he said, I'm an oaf. I'm an idiot, and he owned his shit, So let that be a lesson for Eddie Murphy. He owned it on Leno. Own your shit. And that lesson still holds for all the sex scandals surfacing today, especially around the White House.
Although I think it helps if you're a charming motherfucker like Hugh Grant. I think Eddie Murphy could have pulled it off, but you're saying in relevance to the scandals today.
Yeah. Stormy Daniels.
Even if he owned it, Harvey Weinstein would still come off like a scumbag.
Well, sure he would.
But, I mean, I definitely see your point. But, yeah, it's not a universally applicable
right. I'm wondering,
law.
What do you think the over-under is on a Harvey Weinstein joke occurring within the first 45 seconds of the monologue at the Academy Awards tomorrow night.
I would say the odds are almost better that it's going to be earlier than that on the red carpet.
Yeah,
and not a statement, a joke.
It could go.
Going with a joke.
Yeah, it could go either way. I mean, it's Jimmy Kimmel. He might come out, going full bore on Trump, which I'd have no problem with. Or he might dig into Weinstein a little bit, but something unprecedented is happening at this awards ceremony. Casey Affleck, who won for Best Actor last year, will not be present at the Academy Awards this year. And that's breaking tradition, because the tradition is, as far as I know, if you win Best Actor, that you go on the next show and you give the award to Best Actress.
Right. And
not
vice
happening.
versa. Right.
Yeah, it's not happening. He will not be on the red carpet. So, Casey Affleck, stop sexually harassing women if you haven't done so yet, because it's going to cost you more than a missed appearance on the Academy Awards if you keep that shit up, because I'm watching. I'm watching you. So you're on the gray zone. That was my little Eddie Murphy Good Samaritan story. I guess I want to take you into present time here a little bit. I can't go too deep on this. I'm about to file a story for the Daily Beast that will probably go up early next week. And I want to give you a little preview on that right now. And it's basically a story about the great, iconic comic book creator, Stan Lee. You a comic book fan, David?
I am a big comic book fan. I have a Silver Surfer tattoo. Speaking of Stan Lee, created the Surfer. On one arm, on the other arm, I'm representing DC. Got the Sandman.
Excellent. We'll have to compare ink one of these days. But right now, let me dive in. I promised you a preview. I'm glad you're listening, and here it is. And besides, once my editor gets a hold of my purple prose, the language is going to sound nothing like this, I'm sure. But my working title, as it were, is Picked Apart by Vultures, The Last Days of Stan Lee. Here's a preview. At age 95, Stan Lee should be enjoying the fruits of his many labors. Marvel Comics, the company he served as the former president and chairman of, literally dominates the worlds of film, television, and popular culture. Characters he co-created, among them Spider-Man, Iron Man, X-Men, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, Fantastic Four, and the Avengers, they're all global household names. He has won virtually every award available, to him, in the world of comics, and he received his own star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame in 2011. In 2010, Marvel Comics sold to the Walt Disney Company for like $4 billion, and Lee now tours the world as its elder statesman and ambassador emeritus. Now, there are many, you're the comic book guy, Dave. There's people that would argue that he stole his shit from Jack Kirby and they don't give a fuck about Stan Lee, this, that, and the other thing. But when he goes on tour, when he goes to these comic book shows, one thing a source told me is I had no idea how much money he makes on tour. But we're talking about per event. His payday is between $300,000 and $1 million. Like, he'll do a show in Texas and he'll get paid $300,000. He'll do a show in Australia and he'll get paid $1 million. And guess what? That money, by and large, comes in cash. Can you imagine the mountain of cash that Stan Lee should be sitting on right